There's a photograph that Wisconsin state workers don't want you to see. Taken by a highway cop in 1999, it shows 4 deep cuts torn through the metal door of an empty police car found on Bray Road. The marks start at shoulder height and go downward, each cut nearly half an inch deep. Whatever made them had claws strong enough to slice through steel and stood tall enough to strike from above. The cop who took the photo quit early. He never spoke openly about what he saw that night, but his old partner later said the man wouldn't work night shifts for the rest of his time as a cop. The photograph went missing from files in 2001. By then, over 200 people had reported seeing something that shouldn't exist, something that walks on 2 legs like a man but hunts like a wolf. Elkhorn, Wisconsin sits in the southeast part of the state, about 90 minutes from Milwaukee. It's a quiet place, with about 10,000 people, with dairy farms, forests, and winding country roads all around it. Most Americans have never heard of it, but people who study strange creatures know Elkhorn as the hunting ground of one of the most seen monsters in North American history. The land here belonged to Native American tribes for thousands of years before white settlers arrived. Their old stories, passed down through many generations, speak of beings that were part human and part animal. The Potawatomi called them Wendigo, creatures that had given up being human for power and hunger. The Ho-Chunk spoke of shapeshifters that moved through the forests at night, not fully man or beast. When German and Swedish settlers came to the area in the 1840s, they brought their own stories of werewolves and beastmen. These new arrivals found the native warnings very familiar. Both groups, separated by an ocean and thousands of years, told stories about similar creatures. Both warned against traveling alone at night. Both spoke of monsters that walked upright, but could drop to all fours to chase prey. The modern sightings began much earlier than most people know. In 1936, a night guard named Mark Jefferson was making his rounds at a gravel pit outside Elkhorn when something attacked his guard dog. Jefferson heard the German shepherd cry out once before going quiet. He found the 90-pound dog's body 30 feet from where it had been chained, its neck broken and its body torn by huge claws. The chain had been snapped, not unhooked. Jefferson quit his job the next morning and moved to Illinois. He never told anyone but his family what else he saw that night. His grandson would later say that Jefferson claimed to have seen the attacker. It stood on 2 legs, covered in dark fur, and watched him from the edge of the pit before walking away into the darkness. The modern meetings began much earlier than most people realize. In 1936, a night watchman named Mark Jefferson was making his rounds at a gravel quarry outside Elkhorn when something attacked his guard dog. Jefferson heard the German shepherd cry out once before going silent. He found the 90-pound dog's body 30 feet from where it had been chained, its neck broken and its body torn by huge claws. The chain had been snapped, not unhooked. Jefferson quit his job the next morning and moved to Illinois. He never told anyone except his family what else he saw that night. His grandson would later reveal that Jefferson claimed to have seen the attacker. It stood on 2 legs, covered in dark fur, and watched him from the edge of the quarry before walking away into the darkness. In 1964, a dairy farmer named Dennis Kroof lost 7 cows in a single night. He found them spread across his field, each one killed by a bite to the throat. But these weren't normal animal kills. The bodies had been dragged hundreds of yards and placed in what looked like a pattern on purpose. Some had skin removed very carefully. Others showed signs that something with hands had used tools to crack open the bones for marrow. Kroof noticed something else strange. The grass around each body was pressed down in a circle, as if something had walked around each cow many times, looking at it. Local police blamed wild dogs, though no pack was ever found. Kroof put up bright lights around his land and bought more bullets. 3 weeks later, his neighbor, Tom Hort, saw something walking through Kroof's lit field at 2 in the morning. It stood on 2 legs, covered in dark fur, carrying what looked like a dead calf under one arm. When Hort shouted, the creature dropped to all fours and ran, still carrying its prey. It jumped over a 5-foot fence without slowing down. Hort called Croof right away, and both men searched the land with rifles and flashlights. They found tracks in the mud, strange prints that showed 5 toes with claw marks, but shaped more like a human foot than a paw. Local authorities blamed wild dogs, though no pack was ever found. Croof put up floodlights around his property and bought more bullets. 3 weeks later, his neighbor, Tom Hort, saw something walking through Croof's lit pasture at 2 in the morning. It stood on 2 legs, covered in dark fur, carrying what looked like a dead calf under one arm. When Hort shouted, the creature dropped to all fours and ran, still carrying its prey. It cleared a 5-foot fence without slowing down. Hort called Croof immediately, and both men searched the property with rifles and flashlights. They found tracks in the mud, strange prints that showed 5 toes with claw marks, but arranged more like a human foot than a paw. These early sightings were kept quiet. Rural communities in the 1960s didn't talk about such things openly, but the stories spread in whispers at church gatherings and farm sales. More people came forward privately. A school bus driver said she saw something chase her bus in 1967, running through the fields beside the road. A group of Boy Scouts camping near Elkhorn in 1971 spent a scary night listening to something circle their tents, breathing heavily and sometimes scratching at the canvas. But the event that would bring national attention to Elkhorn didn't happen until the 31st of October, 1989. That's when Dorothy Gibson, an 18-year-old bar manager, met something on Bray Road that would change her life forever. Gibson was driving home from her job at a local tavern. Bray Road is a rural stretch of pavement that connects Elkhorn to the tiny community of Delavan. It's poorly lit, lined with cornfields and patches of thick forest. She'd driven it countless times without problems. The road has a reputation among locals. Even before the modern sightings began, people avoided it at night when possible. Old-timers spoke of strange sounds, mysterious lights, and the feeling of being watched. As she approached the corner with Hospital Road, her headlights lit up something crouched in the drainage ditch. Her first thought was that someone had been in an accident. She slowed down, peering through the passenger window. The figure stood up. Gibson would later struggle to describe what she saw, her words failing to capture the impossibility of it. The creature stood over 6 feet tall on legs that bent like a dog's back legs. Its body was covered in brown fur, muscular but lean. The head was long, wolf-like, with ears that stood upright. Its eyes reflected her headlights with an amber glow, but what scared her most were its arms. They hung down past its knees, ending in what looked like hands with long, dark claws. For a few seconds, neither moved. Then the creature took a step toward her car. She could hear its breathing, deep and steady. Gibson hit the gas pedal hard, her tires spinning on loose rocks before catching. In her mirror, she watched the thing chase her car. It ran upright, arms swinging, keeping up with her car for nearly a quarter mile before turning into a cornfield. She later said she was driving at least 35 miles per hour, yet the creature had no trouble keeping up. She drove straight home, locked her doors, and called her boyfriend. She didn't tell the police, sure, they'd think she was drunk or crazy, but she did tell her family and close friends. Word spread quickly through the small town. Within days, others began to share their own stories. 3 days later, Laurie Endridzi was coming back from a Halloween party in Delavan when she saw what she thought was a person kneeling in the road near Bray Road. Worried they might be hurt, she slowed her car. As her headlights fully lit up the figure, she knew she was wrong. The creature's face was covered in gray-brown fur with a long snout full of teeth she could see. Its eyes glowed yellow in her headlights. When it stood, she could see it was huge, well over 6 feet tall, with arms that seemed too long for its body. Endridzi did something Gibson hadn't. She told the Walworth County Sheriff's Department what she saw. The deputy who took her report would later say she was shaking badly, her hands trembling as she drew a picture of what she'd seen. That drawing, simple but clear, would match dozens of others drawn by people who saw the creature over the coming years. The deputy, Robert Martinez, filed the report but didn't take it seriously at first. That changed when more reports came in over the next few weeks. Within a month, over 12 people had told police about sightings. Russell Jest, a hunter who had been tracking animals for 40 years in Wisconsin's forests, met the creature while checking trap lines. He said it moved with clear smarts, staying away from his traps as if it understood what they were. He watched it look at one trap, poking at it with a stick, before carefully stepping around it. The creature then looked right at him, as if it knew he'd been watching the whole time. Patricia Lester, a sheriff's deputy, saw it eating a dead deer on a foggy November night. When she came closer with her spotlight and gun ready, it stood to its full height, grabbed the 150-pound dead deer with one arm, and walked calmly into the forest. She noted that it walked like a human, with a similar walk and arm swing, but covered ground much faster than any person could. Scott Bray, whose family had farmed the area for many years and whose family had given Bray Road its name, had maybe the best sighting. He was checking on cows one cold December evening when he saw them bunched together scared in a corner of the field. His flashlight showed a huge, fur-covered figure near the fence. When the light hit it, the creature dropped to all fours and ran away, jumping over a 4-foot fence in one leap. But before it ran, Bray got a good look at its face. He said it had features that were wolf-like but wrong somehow, as if human features had been mixed in. The eyes, he said, showed smarts and awareness that no normal animal had. The next morning, Bray found tracks in the mud. They showed an animal that switched between walking on 2 legs and running on 4. He made plaster molds of several prints. They showed long feet with claw marks, a step length of nearly 6 feet when walking upright, and what looked like a thumb. He also found pieces of dark brown fur caught on the fence where the creature had jumped over. The fur was rough and thick, unlike any farm animal he knew. Linda Godfrey, a reporter for the local newspaper, began looking into what she first thought was a Halloween joke. She didn't believe it, planning to write a funny story about small-town beliefs. But the more people she talked to, the more she believed something real was happening. These weren't people looking for attention or playing pranks. They were farmers, truck drivers, nurses, teachers, and even police officers. Many didn't want to speak openly, afraid people would laugh at them. Their stories stayed the same. A large, wolf-like creature that walked on 2 legs but could drop to all fours, dark fur, usually brown or black, eyes that reflected light in strange colors, often orange or yellow but sometimes red or green, arms that hung below its knees when standing, and a terrible smell, like wet dog mixed with rotting meat, and something else, something like rotten eggs. Godfrey found that many people had kept their stories secret for years. David Resnick said he'd hit what he thought was a large dog with his truck in 1987. He watched it stand up on 2 legs and walk into the forest, not hurt even though the hit had dented his bumper and cracked his headlight. Mary Schindler said she saw it drinking from a creek in 1988, using its hands to cup water to its mouth like a human would. The winter of 1989 to 1990 brought more problems. Pets began going missing from homes along Bray Road. The Steinberg family lost 2 dogs in 1 week. They found only bloody drag marks leading into the forest. The dogs' collars were later found hanging from a tree branch 7 feet off the ground, as if something had put them there on purpose. The Johnsons' German Shepherd, known for being mean, was found hiding under their porch, too scared to come out. It had 4 scratches across its back, too wide apart to be from any known animal. The vet who treated the dog said the wounds looked like they'd been made by something playing with the dog, not trying to kill it. Tom Brichter, a local photographer and amateur researcher, began setting up cameras along Bray Road. Most nights, he captured nothing but ordinary wildlife. But on 3 occasions, his cameras recorded something unusual. The images were blurry, showing a large, upright figure moving through the frame. In one photo, the creature appeared to be looking directly at the camera, its eyes glowing in the flash. Brichter also recorded strange sounds, howls that started like a wolf, but ended with an almost human quality. Karen Bowie, who worked catching stray animals, began writing down strange ways animals were being killed in the area. Dead deer were found in trees, put there by something strong enough to climb while carrying heavy prey. Some bodies were found miles from where they'd been killed, based on blood trails. Others showed signs of tool use, bones cracked open with rocks to get at the marrow inside. She also found several deer that had been killed, but not eaten, their bodies placed in shapes that made no sense for a normal animal hunter. The bite marks on these dead animals didn't match any Wisconsin animal. The jaw that made them had to be huge, with both sharp teeth like a meat-eater and flat teeth like an animal that eats plants. Whatever was killing these animals could eat both meat and plants, though it clearly liked meat better. In March 1990, things got worse. Security guard Mike Etten was working the night shift at a local factory when he heard something in the parking lot. The sound was like metal being pulled, like something trying to open the dumpster lids. When he went to look, he found a huge creature going through the trash. When his flashlight hit it, the thing stood up to its full height, which Etten guessed was 8 feet. He could see its hands clearly, larger than human hands but able to bend and move like ours. The fingers ended in black claws at least 2 inches long. Its face was mostly hidden in shadow, but he could see the eyes glowing green in his flashlight. For nearly a minute, they stared at each other. Etten later said he felt like the creature was looking at him, trying to decide if he was dangerous. Then it dropped to all fours and ran toward the fence around the building. Instead of going around to the gate, it jumped over the 8-foot chain-link fence in one leap. The meeting was caught on security cameras, though the grainy video showed only a large, dark shape. More important, investigators found real evidence. Deep claw marks on the dumpster's edge where the creature had held it. Tracks in the mud, showing both 2-legged and 4-legged walking, and several dark hairs caught on the fence where the creature had jumped over. Laboratory analysis of the hair samples gave puzzling results. They showed features of dog fur but with differences that didn't match any known species. The hairs were thicker than normal, with an unusual hollow core that might provide extra insulation. DNA testing, still basic in 1990, produced confusing results. The samples seemed to contain genetic markers from multiple species, as if contaminated or somehow mixed together. Dr. Richard Hendricks, an animal scientist from Michigan State University, came to investigate after hearing about the hair samples. He spent 3 weeks in the area, interviewing witnesses and examining evidence. His conclusion shocked the scientific community. While many sightings could be explained as mistaken identity or hoaxes, a core group of encounters defied normal explanation. The physical evidence, while not conclusive, suggested something unknown was living in the area. The summer of 1990 brought the most dramatic encounter yet. A group of teenagers camping illegally in the Kettle Moraine State Forest reported being stalked throughout the night. Mark Shackleman, one of the campers, kept a detailed journal of what happened. Something circled their campsite starting around midnight, staying just beyond the firelight. They could hear breathing, footsteps and branches breaking. When they shined flashlights into the darkness, they saw eyes shine at a height of nearly 7 feet. The creature seemed to be testing them, coming closer each time they looked away. At one point, it threw small stones at their tents, not hard enough to damage anything but clearly meant to get their attention. The teenagers huddled together around the fire, too terrified to sleep or flee in the darkness. Just before dawn, around 4:30 in the morning, the creature finally revealed itself. It walked into the edge of the firelight on 2 legs. The teenagers described it as wolf-like, but wrong in every proportion. Arms too long, hanging past its knees. A head too large for its body, with a snout full of visible teeth. Legs that bent in unusual ways, allowing it to crouch very low or stand very tall. It made no aggressive moves, simply observed them for what felt like hours but was probably less than a minute. One of the teenagers, Brian Fortney, managed to take a photograph, but his hands were shaking so badly that the image showed only a dark blur against the trees. Then it turned and walked back into the darkness, moving with an odd, rolling gait that covered ground quickly. The teens fled at first light, some of them running the entire 5 miles back to the parking area. When they returned with adults and police to get their abandoned gear, they found the campsite surrounded by tracks. The prints showed something that walked on 2 legs, dropped to all 4s to move around obstacles, then stood again. Claw marks scarred trees at heights no bear could reach, some over 8 feet off the ground. Local authorities found themselves in an impossible position. They couldn't officially say an unknown creature existed, but they couldn't ignore the mounting evidence and eyewitness accounts. Sheriff's deputies began traveling in pairs when responding to calls near Bray Road. Several officers privately admitted to their own sightings, though none would file official reports. Deputy Carl Morrison told his family he'd seen it 3 times while on patrol, always at a distance, always watching from the tree line. The phenomenon attracted national attention when the television show Inside Edition featured a segment on the Beast of Bray Road in 1991. The flood of tourists, journalists, and monster hunters had mixed results. While some brought scientific equipment and expertise, others trampled evidence and made up sightings for attention. Local businesses were divided. Some embraced the attention, selling Beast t-shirts and offering guided tours. Others resented the circus atmosphere and the suggestion their town was home to monsters. One positive result of the media attention was that more witnesses came forward. Barbara Salmeron, a nurse at Lakeland Medical Center, described an encounter from 1985 that she'd never reported. She was driving home from a late shift when something jumped onto the hood of her car. The creature's weight dented the metal, and its claws left deep scratches in the paint. It stared at her through the windshield for several seconds, before jumping off and running into a cornfield. She'd told no one except her husband, fearing for her professional reputation. The winter of 1991 to 1992 saw a decrease in sightings, leading some to guess the creature had died or moved away. This theory was destroyed in March 1992 when 3 separate witnesses reported seeing it on the same night, in locations miles apart. Either there were multiple creatures, or it could cover vast distances with remarkable speed. The witnesses included a state trooper who refused to be named, a veterinarian driving to an emergency call, and a couple returning from a late movie. All described the same thing, a large, wolf-like creature that walked upright and seemed unafraid of humans. Dr. Jennifer Coleman, a respected physician from Elkhorn, had the most detailed encounter in 1994. She was driving home from a medical conference in Madison when she saw what she first thought was a person in a costume standing by the roadside. Her medical training allowed her to notice anatomical details others had missed. The creature's knee joints bent differently than human knees, more like a dog's back legs. This would allow it to switch smoothly between walking on 2 legs and running on 4. The shoulder joints showed unusual flexibility, and the spine seemed to curve in ways that would be impossible for a human. She pulled over about a quarter mile down the road and watched through her mirrors as the creature crossed the highway. It moved with purpose and intelligence, looking both ways before crossing, just as a person would. But its speed and grace were far beyond human capability. She estimated it crossed the 4-lane highway in less than 3 seconds. That same year, 1994, brought the first and only documented attack on a human. Delivery driver Jason Cromwell was changing a flat tire on Bray Road when something struck him from behind, knocking him to the ground. He felt claws rake across his back, tearing through his jacket and shirt. He managed to scramble under his truck, where he lay terrified as the creature circled the vehicle. He could see its feet as it walked around, sometimes on 2 legs, sometimes dropping to all 4s. The feet were long and narrow, with dark pads like a dog, but toes that were longer and more finger-like. The creature reached under the truck several times, with what Cromwell described as disturbingly human-like hands, tipped with claws. It seemed to be trying to grab him, but the space was too narrow for its arms to reach far enough. After what felt like hours but was probably 10 minutes, the creature gave up and left. Cromwell could hear it moving through the nearby corn, the stalks rustling as it passed. Cromwell drove himself to the hospital, with his spare tire barely attached, his back bearing 4 parallel gashes that required 23 stitches. The emergency room physician, Dr. Harold Blackstone, noted that the wounds were consistent with a large animal attack, but unlike any he'd seen before. The spacing between the claws suggested a hand much larger than a human's, but with a similar structure. The depth of the wounds indicated tremendous strength, as they'd gone through multiple layers of clothing and into the muscle beneath. This attack marked a turning point. The sheriff's department increased patrols and issued warnings about aggressive wildlife in the area. Behind closed doors, a task force was formed, including law enforcement, wildlife officials, and medical professionals. Their unofficial mandate was to investigate the phenomenon while maintaining public calm. They established protocols for responding to sightings, collecting evidence, and managing witness trauma. Dr. Howard Simmons, a psychiatrist at Lakeland Medical Center, began studying the psychological impact on witnesses. Many showed symptoms of post-traumatic stress, even those who'd had brief, non-threatening encounters. The impossibility of what they'd seen created a form of mental conflict that was difficult to process. Several witnesses reported nightmares, anxiety when driving at night, and a constant feeling of being watched when outdoors. Simmons noted that witnesses came from diverse backgrounds with no apparent connection to each other. They included teenagers and elderly people, skeptics and believers, educated professionals and high school dropouts. Their descriptions remained consistent across all demographics, suggesting they were seeing the same thing rather than imagining creatures based on cultural expectations. In 1995, wildlife photographer Rachel Gendreau captured 3 photographs of the creature in daylight. She'd been photographing birds in the Kettle Moraine State Forest when movement caught her eye. Through her telephoto lens, she saw a massive wolf-like creature walking upright through a clearing about 200 yards away. She managed to take 3 photos before it disappeared into the undergrowth. While not perfectly clear due to distance and foliage, the photographs showed more detail than any previous images. Photography experts found no evidence of hoaxing. The proportions visible didn't match any known animal or any commercially available costume. The creature appeared to be covered in dark brown fur except for lighter coloring on the chest and face. Its arms were clearly too long for a human in a suit, and the head showed a pronounced snout with visible teeth. Most disturbing were the hands. The photos showed what appeared to be opposable thumbs, allowing the creature to grip branches as it moved through the forest. This detail supported witness accounts of tool use and suggested a level of evolution beyond any known animal. The photographs brought renewed attention to Elkhorn. Television crews returned, books were written, and the town found itself at the center of cryptozoological debate. Some residents embraced the fame, opening beast-themed restaurants and gift shops. Others resented the intrusion and moved away rather than deal with the constant questions and tourism. Historical research revealed the phenomenon wasn't new. Dorothy Kleeman, a local historian, found newspaper accounts dating back to the 1890s. An 1893 article described farmers finding mutilated livestock killed by an unknown predator. A 1909 report mentioned a wild man seen near Bray Road. A 1936 police report detailed multiple sightings of a werewolf that walked upright and showed no fear of humans. Native American oral histories were even older. The Ho-Chunk Nation had stories of shapeshifters in this area going back centuries. They described creatures that could walk as men but hunt as wolves, beings caught between 2 worlds. These stories were remarkably similar to European werewolf legends, despite developing independently. In December 1995, the most controversial evidence emerged. A group of experienced hunters claimed to have found the creature's body in a remote section of forest. They described a corpse about 7 feet long, covered in dark brown fur, with features that were neither fully human nor fully animal. The skull was elongated like a wolf's, but with a larger brain case. The hands had opposable thumbs, but ended in claws. The legs showed the distinctive backward-bending knees that witnesses had described. The hunters took photographs and left to get authorities, but when they returned 2 hours later with sheriff's deputies and wildlife officials, the body had vanished. Only disturbed earth, some blood, and a terrible smell remained. The hunters passed polygraph tests, but skeptics noted that polygraphs only measure belief, not truth. The photographs, while interesting, were of poor quality and showed little detail. This incident divided the community. Believers saw it as proof the creatures existed and that someone, perhaps the government, was covering up the evidence. Skeptics saw it as an elaborate hoax or misidentification of a known animal. The controversy continues today, with neither side able to definitively prove their case. As sightings decreased in the late 1990s, researchers proposed various theories. Dr. Patricia Thornton, an anthropologist from the University of Wisconsin, suggested the beast might represent a surviving population of prehistoric animals that had evolved intelligence to avoid human detection. She pointed to the consistent witness descriptions, the physical evidence, and the long history of sightings as evidence of a real phenomenon. Dr. Alan Steinberg, a geneticist from Northwestern University, proposed a different theory. He suggested the unusual DNA results and the creature's apparent intelligence might indicate artificial origins. He noted that genetic experimentation in the early 20th century, while primitive, had attempted to create human-animal hybrids. Could the beast be the result of such experiments, either escaped or deliberately released? Ground-penetrating radar revealed an extensive cave system beneath the Bray Road area. These largely unexplored caverns could theoretically shelter a small population of unknown creatures. Several spelunkers reported finding large bones, unusual scat, and scratch marks deep in the caves before the entrances were sealed for safety reasons. One caver, Maria Santos, described finding what looked like a sleeping area, with grass and leaves arranged into a rough bed. Near it were bones that had been cracked open for marrow and what appeared to be primitive tools made from stones and antlers. The new millennium brought new technology to the investigation. Trail cameras became smaller and harder to detect, though they still rarely captured clear images of the creature. When they did record something, it was usually just eye shine or a blurry shape moving quickly through the frame. Many cameras were found damaged or repositioned, suggesting the creature knew what they were and actively avoided them. Environmental DNA sampling detected unknown genetic material in water sources throughout the area. These samples contained DNA that didn't match any known species, but showed consistency across multiple locations and times. This suggested a single unknown species rather than contamination or errors. In 2006, an anonymous retired military officer claimed the government had investigated the beast phenomenon in the 1990s. According to his account, a special unit had been deployed to capture or kill the creature. They'd used thermal imaging, motion sensors, and trained tracking dogs. But after 6 months of operations, they'd failed to get more than distant sightings and unclear photographs. The investigation was allegedly abandoned when the creature was deemed not a threat to national security. This revelation, while impossible to verify, matched with witness accounts from the 1990s. Several people reported seeing unmarked black helicopters flying low over the forest. Others described being interviewed by people claiming to be from wildlife agencies but showing credentials that didn't match any known organization. Tom Granger, a farmer, said 2 men in suits came to his property after he reported a sighting. They asked detailed questions, took measurements and samples, then told him not to discuss what he'd seen with anyone. Modern sightings continue, though less frequently. In 2018, A group of college students camping in the same forest where the 1990 encounter occurred reported an almost identical experience. Something stalked their campsite throughout the night, throwing stones and branches to get their attention. Around dawn, they saw it clearly as it stood at the edge of their camp. They described the same impossible proportions, the same intelligent eyes, the same casual fearlessness that witnesses had reported for decades. The students tried to photograph it with their smartphones, but the images showed only darkness, as if the creature somehow absorbed or bent light. One student, Ashley Thompson, managed to record audio of its breathing and footsteps. The recording was analyzed by sound experts who couldn't identify the source, but noted it showed patterns matching a large, two-legged creature. During the 2020 pandemic, when human activity decreased dramatically, fresh tracks appeared in usually populated areas. Park rangers found footprints on hiking trails that had been closed for months. Scratch marks appeared on trees in city parks. Pet disappearances increased along Bray Road. It seemed the creature or creatures had become bolder in the absence of human activity. Environmental scientists note persistent anomalies in the ecosystem around Bray Road. Certain areas show reduced populations of small mammals and ground-nesting birds, as if something hunts there more efficiently than known predators. These dead zones correspond to areas with the highest concentration of historical sightings. They also show unusual patterns of plant growth, with some areas having paths through the undergrowth that don't match any known animal trails. Recent advances in genetic analysis have revealed something extraordinary. Hair samples collected over 30 years all contain similar, unusual DNA markers. They suggest a single species with ancient hybridization in its genome, possibly a relic population that survived extinction by developing intelligence and avoiding human contact. The DNA shows markers from multiple canine species, but also sequences that don't match any known animal. Dr. Michael Rodriguez, who has studied the phenomenon for 20 years, believes the beast represents something beyond conventional cryptozoology. He suggests it might exist in a state between physical and something else, manifesting when conditions are right, but not bound by normal physical constraints. This would explain why clear photographs are so rare, why the creature seems to appear and disappear without using the cave systems, and why it shows no fear of humans despite being outnumbered. The economic impact on Elkhorn has been substantial and complex. The town has become a destination for monster hunters, paranormal investigators, and curious tourists. Some businesses thrive on this attention. The Beast of Bray Road has become a brand, appearing on everything from coffee mugs to Halloween costumes. An annual Beast Days festival draws thousands of visitors each October. But there's a darker side to the fame. Property values near Bray Road remain low. Some longtime residents have moved away, tired of the attention and the fear. Parents worry about their children playing outside. Farmers lose livestock and pets to something they can't identify or stop. The local school district has had to address trauma in students who claim to have seen the creature. Local law enforcement maintains an official stance of denial while following established protocols for beast sightings. Officers document evidence, take witness statements seriously, but avoid speculation about what people might have seen. Deputy Sarah Williams, speaking off the record, said every officer on the force has a beast story, either their own sighting or a call they've responded to, but none will speak publicly about it. The Native Americans who first lived on this land understood something we've forgotten in our modern world. They knew the boundary between the human world and the animal world wasn't as solid as we pretend. They knew some beings could cross that boundary, existing in both realms at once. Their stories, dismissed as primitive superstition, might have been warnings based on real encounters. Today, Bray Road remains a quiet, rural stretch where locals drive a little faster at night. They lock their doors, keep their pets inside, and avoid looking too closely at the shadows between the trees. They know something is out there, something that watches from the darkness with amber eyes and intelligence that shouldn't exist in an animal's gaze. Children grow up with warnings about playing in the woods alone. Teenagers dare each other to drive down Bray Road at midnight. Adults exchange knowing looks when outsiders ask about the beast, neither confirming nor denying what they've seen or heard. It's become part of the fabric of life in Elkhorn, a shared secret that bonds the community. The investigation continues with new technology and fresh approaches. Thermal drones patrol the night sky, recording heat signatures that don't match known animals. Advanced DNA sequencing searches for answers in biological evidence. Artificial intelligence analyzes patterns in sighting data, looking for behaviors that might predict when and where the creature will appear next. Yet the beast remains elusive, always one step ahead, adapted to our methods of detection. Perhaps that's how it has survived for so long. Perhaps that's why cultures separated by oceans and millennia all describe similar creatures. They've always been here, living in the spaces we don't look, hunting in the hours we don't venture out, existing in a reality slightly shifted from our own. Those who've encountered the beast describe a moment when everything they thought they knew about the world shifted, when the impossible became undeniable, when they realized the monsters we relegate to myth might simply be the ones smart enough to remain hidden. They speak of the intelligence in its eyes, the deliberate nature of its movements, the sense that it was evaluating them just as much as they were observing it. Some witnesses never recover from their encounters. They spend years in therapy trying to reconcile what they saw with what science says is possible. Others embrace the experience, becoming researchers and investigators themselves, dedicated to proving the creature's existence. A few simply accept it and move on, filing the encounter away as one of life's unsolvable mysteries. Dr. Barbara Foster, who has interviewed over 100 witnesses, notes common themes in their accounts. Many report a sense of ancient intelligence, as if the creature has been watching humans for generations. Others describe a feeling of being evaluated, tested, or even played with. Several witnesses have reported that the creature seemed more curious than aggressive, as if it was studying human behavior. The Beast of Bray Road has inspired books, documentaries, and even horror films. It's become part of American folklore, joining Bigfoot and the Jersey Devil in the pantheon of famous cryptids. But for those who live in Elkhorn, it's not folklore. It's a real presence that affects their daily lives, shapes their behaviors, and haunts their nights. Local teacher Mark Henderson has been collecting accounts for 15 years. His database now contains over 400 reported sightings, with new ones added every few months. He's mapped the encounters, looking for patterns in location, time, and witness demographics. His research suggests the creature or creatures follow specific routes through the area, possibly hunting circuits that have been used for generations. Henderson has also documented what he calls near misses, encounters that almost happened but didn't. People who felt watched but saw nothing. Drivers who swerved to avoid something in the road that disappeared before they could identify it. Hunters who found kills they didn't make, stripped of meat with surgical precision. These accounts suggest the beast is active far more often than actual sightings would indicate. The next time you drive through rural Wisconsin on a foggy night, pay attention to that primal instinct that makes you check your locks.